Good afternoon, guys. In this video, I will be reacting to Joel Telling's or 3D Printing Nerds video. This is in reference to a bill that is going through California. I believe Senate is at this point. Now, this is one of a bunch of bills that are going through the American legal system right now that they can be generally placed under the auspice of we want to reduce ghost guns. So what are ghost guns? A gun has certain identifiers, something like a serial number that helps authorities to trace whether a gun is connected to a person. So if there is a crime, the rifling, its components may be traced back to individuals, so it's easier to catch the culprits and regulate this market. Now, ghost guns are essentially guns that have replaced parts or that they're entirely 3D printed, and the entire point is that they are very hard to trace or untraceable. And USA, through various legislative efforts, is trying to reduce that. Now let's get into the
The bill
video.
still makes no one safer, and at this point, they've broken it. It went to appropriations for an independent fiscal analysis.
By the way, and he's gonna go into the detail, there was another bill, the same exact same idea. It was in DC a few months ago. I did a video on it, just doing a long form reacting in it. And what he's saying, the fiscal part, it makes absolutely no sense. That bill and this bill, they have really tight time constraints that they have to be operating within a couple of years, essentially. And they do that, but the technology behind them doesn't exist at the moment. The infrastructure outside just the technology. So it's difficult to estimate that because it's like saying, I want to build a house, and you go into an engineer or an architect, and they ask you, okay, um, how much is that going to cost me? And the engineer is asking you, have you decided where? No. Do you have a plot of land? No. Do you have like the appropriate permits? No. Do you know how big the house needs to be? Kinda. Uh, and yeah, how can someone make an estimate if they have that little information? And that's one of the big, and I'll explain more. I'm just let Joel do the talking and then add a little bit more, add a lot more information on top of it.
And it came back from that with issues all over the place. At the core, the California Department of Justice just can't put a price tag on something that might be impossible to.
Like he said, like the technology doesn't exist. So to begin with, unless you have the software and hardware and they are benchmarked, you don't know how they can be how can they be costed into what you will need, because of the software or the hardware. There is the infrastructure behind them, the public one that will have to manage them, and this is difficult. The other thing is this is really down to the DC regulation. The way it was worded, it was including legacy CNC machines as well. A lot of those machines may be not longer supported, but because there are large expenditures, a small middle of the road shop may be using it in their own operation, and they are unable to upgrade them or unwilling to change it because it works and it just does the job you needed. But they may have not been designed with the capability to add protective software that makes it impossible to print or CNC mill at this point gun parts. So that foresight may have not been there. So if you are, as a government, you are coming and saying this is now illegal, I would argue outside just the First Amendment, right? There is a property right issue there, because if you are making my stuff illegal post fact because there may be some danger, then you'd have to do some buyback sim. You have to compensate those people because you are effectively putting them out of business if you do not buy back their equipment, or if they have to change that equipment to a newer one. I would say that you would have to have some kind of public rebate program, but even that is a questionable thing, because if I am a small pop and map workshop and maybe you've got a CNC lathe or a 3D printer arm of the business, and the way I'm using those words may talk to a bigger business, but it can actually be a small workshop. maybe I'm not willing to go into tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of new spent to get that new equipment for something that doesn't affect me.
To do. So the bill was amended 33 times, and it
Amendments happen 33 times with such a small window to actually get it to be functional is an issue. If this was something like an initiative and it said we want to create that, we want to allocate capital and money and people to this project, and let's have a soft horizon, let's say within 5 years, we would like to see some results and we can evaluate them, that would be a different. But right now, they are creating a very expedited process. And again, it's 2 years. Anyone who has done any level of development that has even just software or hardware understands how difficult that is. And this is combining software and hardware. And if you look at the bill, there is a lot of technical gaps that are not really being addressed. So the person who's writing this law, I don't know how technically proficient with 3D printing are. They are really, and you need to get essentially the public, the state, which is notoriously slow, to do something that even a very agile small private company may not be able to do at a cost you're not. It's not certain that you can that even exists because you don't know if the technology exists.
was rushed through. And in that rush, they broke it. What? I'm not kidding. The version of AB 2047 moving from the Appropriations Committee to the Assembly floor is fundamentally flawed, with a glaring contradiction right in the middle of it. On page 12 of the amended bill, it says they have to equip their printers with certified firearm blocking technology, as described in sections 3273.633.
By the way, the time frame is really short, so by 29, I think 28, 29, they should be doing this. But certifying implies three things. You have the technology, which is probably going to have to be software and hardware, if not just hardware. You have to have it benchmarked, and or you have to have a benchmark by which the companies, because that's what they are doing later on, to clear that technology. And you have to have a certification body, and probably you have to have some legal structure of what happens if there is a non-compliance, how is the escalation, because there is going to be some degree of error. Let's say we expect 90% to recognize those parts, but it does not 89. It's a whole different discussion between it lets everything go. So one may be some bug in the software, and if it's a complicated software, it's kind of understandable. And the other one might be just criminal level negligence. But even that, how if I if and for the vendors, especially if they are buying printers in bulk, that may actually kill a lot of smaller manufacturers and smaller middlemen, because what happens is that you are going to have a lot of printers that are sitting in your storage area, because people are afraid that in a couple of years they may actually be illegal to even own. They may stop buying it. You are stuck with inventory that you thought it was gonna move a lot faster. So you are not recuperating the money you put in, and you have to pay. You essentially have to pay for storage. And if it's not possible to upgrade those older models by introducing some kind of chip into their motherboard, which we will see later on, this is not possible because the law says the solution has to be so that a technically competent individual cannot defeat it. So this already is a very high bar to cross. You may have bricked all of them. So this is the other thing. What happened with them? Because those weren't vendors who were doing something illegal. This is vendors who you have essentially created a line in the sun in the future that their business is gonna be illegal, and but by in the way you are doing it, you are affecting them right now, even if it's going to be in 3 years. So I would argue that there has to be some degree of buying back the excess inventory, and if you want to pass this law, just giving those people a fair payout, because at the end of the day, if you're going to kill their market or if you're going to severely damage it, um, you should be compensating them. And the other thing is the way this is phrased, and Joel is underlying the certified, but I would underline actually the first and the second line. it doesn't just affect a middleman in California. So if you want to be manufacturing a printer that could be sold in California, you either have to kind of have on your CRM system a way to just partition California purchases on any other state that does those purchases and say, in those places we are just exporting those three printers or those three subcategories of this particular printer. But what's most likely going to happen is that you're going to have to introduce those hardware and software considerations across the entire chain. And so if you are a company like Reality and you are selling printers and you want to be compliant, even if you are selling it to a European like me, because I'm in Europe, you may have had to introduce either you have to have two separate production lines or you have to have one line with introduced more parts. So this increased the baseline cost, the manufacturer cost for the maker, which means that companies that are making printers that are discount printers may go out of business because you push the price too high. You may be dissuaded from buying a printer because it will be illegal, because the price may be inflated slightly to compensate for all these shenanigans, but you don't want to buy a printer for 600, you want to buy for 500. And because you are having a shrinkage of the available machines that are affordable, you also are gonna then have an impact on the filament, the replacement part, the STL sales and repositories, because all of this it's a circle, it's an ecosystem. So 3D printers are the core, are the heart, but the moment they get hurt, everything is being hit simultaneously, even if not immediately.
And 3273.634. The problem is the parts of the bill that describe that, how to get certified, page 6, line 30 through page 7, line 29, and page 9, lines 8 through 34, they're completely struck through. The entire DOJ certification process, gone. The written notice of compliance, gone as well. The entire bill was built around a firearm blueprint detection algorithm that was supposed to be run by the California Department of Justice. Software that evaluates every file before your printer can see it. Software that would evaluate the geometry and give you a yes or no whether or not you can print it. That software doesn't exist.
And it's worse than what you described. First of all, like I said, by just creating this kind of legal framework, because before this is mature, they are effecting a change before the change even happens. Because there isn't an exit clause in all of that, because both the DC and every other law I've seen, they do not have a line that says, if we are unable to reach this threshold by this date, we scrap the entire thing, we have to start over, and we have to the process has to be remade. They, even if they haven't in effect banned 3D printing or severely limited, uh, investment is going to shrivel up. If you want to create a manufacturing a small manufacturer and you wanted to do it around 3D printing, you will right now have to integrate into your costs, your capital, and your future expected ones, the possibility that your machines are going to be far more expensive. They may be slower because the software that he's describing, it almost definitely cannot happen on the machine side alone, because 3D printers are really stupid machines, so they do not have the ability to understand complex geometry. So you would have to do some kind of situation of this is happening on the slicer end, or like the DC bill, the HB 2021, I think it was a bill. It's communicated to some kind of cloud service that evaluates it and then gives you the okay. But all of those things, they add a lot of time to your average print time. Even if for a hobby that might not be important, but for a business, let's say you are having an extra 10 minutes on average per file. Like this entire process, either on the slicer end or it gets communicated to some kind of cloud service. This is a lot of time for a company that wants to produce en masse, and this is just dead time. And I will go even further. What happens if it detects that it is something that is illicit? Presumably, they should communicate authorities that, listen, this guy is making something he shouldn't be doing. But then you go more steps further, then the question of how much erroneous positives and how much erroneous negatives do you have from the software. That's why, because you don't have a software or hardware right now that can do this, and there isn't a benchmark, you cannot calculate the actual cost. So if you want to do a capex, either like a 3D printing, like you are offering prototyping services, or you are creating 3D printers or 3D printer adjacent materials and services and paraphernalia, you may not do this investment because you don't know what's going to happen here. So by doing this in such a way, they have already affected the change, even though it may take 2-3 years to actually manifest. So this is an issue.
Instead, the Department of Justice has been given until January 1st, 2028 to publish performance standards for a technology that doesn't exist. Once the performance standards are published, companies must find or create a mandated software solution that is technically impossible and violates the First Amendment, or else they are banned from selling any 3D printer in the state of California or any other states that adopt this legislation. This is no longer being created by the state.
And again, if you are a middleman, even if you're not printers, if you are just filaments, this is, you need to, it has to be understood that this regulation is gonna cascade and cause so many problems in all those adjacent areas. And I would argue, I haven't looked at the law, maybe I probably will, that there is some basis from a kind of buyback or a rebate. You aren't doing something illegal, you are being rendered illegal. So when you are doing expenditure in any economy, capital expenditure, even if you are a tiny, you bought 5 printers, you put them on your corner, and you started doing things for exit, this is a capital expenditure. This is your money. This is your private property. They have to be able to show, first of all, that the software and the hardware work. They work up to a very acceptable level. And I would argue they would have to, even if they work, you have to determine what percentage of gun violence in America is due to ghost guns, because this may be a massive issue. Because I'm in Europe, we do not have such a pronounced problem with ghost guns. I don't even think I've heard it being talked once. And the massive thing is that in America, it seems to be that you have a gun culture which kind of creates fertile ground for gun violence in ways that you don't see it in Europe, at least to such a degree.
Department of Justice. All responsibility is now on the companies and the users.
Like I said, the companies and the users are essentially expected to create and to take all this cost. And what a company that wants to continue down this sector is going to do, very simple, they're going to either overcompensate, so they're going to create software solutions that are so sensitive that it's going to slow down everything, or they're just going to roll the dice and hope the fines that they receive are outweighed by the ability to continue selling their equipment. But because you also have an issue with the customer side, you're not safe to do that as a company, because even if you say, for me, it's just a fine, if I were to buy a printer and I would be fined in America, then I'm not buying a printer.
To navigate this fantasy technology, they rush the bill because it gets attention, it gets the clicks. They thought nobody would notice.
Oh no.
Here's a few other changes and highlights from the bill and how they would affect you. They now added an exemption for entertainment industry stagecraft and prop making studios.
By the way, in your tax returns, you can definitely put descriptions, but could you just say that if I have a small, he says that later on, a small Etsy store and I'm printing stuff from my basement from a home workshop, can I just put it, or do I have to do like be part of some kind of syndicate to say I'm a prop making studio, even if I'm a very tiny one? Even if you can do that, you're not escaping the tax on the printer has to be compliant either way, because they are going to be selling that. And secondly, even if it's a trivial amount of money every year, like 100 euros or dollars for Americans a year, you are just being asked to pointlessly just give some money up because there are some bad guys, and
But they
that's not
failed
fair.
to define what any of it is. None of these exemptions have any definitions or explanations at all. They did have this one gem, this one statement. The entertainment clause has one sentence, and it says that printers manufactured for and sold exclusively to entertainment industry stagecraft and prop making studios are exempt.
Like right here, you understand, anyone who has worked with 3D printers understand this is bullshit. Like the person who has done this, they probably do not have a deep technical understanding. It is possible to have printers that are either marketed or that they are targeted to very high-end customers. That exists. There are printers out there that cost hundreds of thousands of euros, but the reality is that they are few and far between. Most of the printers that are being sold are the kind of that they fall in between the professional and the home appliance kind of side. So you see to my back a Bamboo X1C, that's €1,000 printer. That's not a cheap printer. That's not, however, a very expensive printer. And for its capabilities, I would say it's a very good printer. And I mean the price to capability ratio. Now, if I were big part of the application of a finished product has to do with your nozzle and your filament and your settings. Your settings, you can control them. Your nozzle, you can change it, and you can buy specialized nozzles, high temperature nozzles, high hardness nozzles, etc., etc. And you can buy specialized filament. So, in theory, I could even probably not pick is a very high temperature, but theoretically, if I wanted to swap out some parts of my printer, I could even print PIC in this printer. It may kill it in the process, but like it's not that difficult to print very bespoke materials and do for bespoke users. So this just nakedly demonstrates that this is not well thought out law.
There are no machines made exclusively for the
Exactly.
entertainment industry. A 3D printer is a tool, just like there's no hammer used specifically to make a house. You don't get a house labeled hammer. I won't.
That was his observation here is exactly what I told you. It's a perfect analogy.
One. What about all the independent designers and makers and cosplayers? They typically work out of their home or they are small businesses. Are they covered? California has put a massive funding effort into 3D printing in education. Most of those machines are running open source firmware, and most of those machines allow you to use any slicer you want. The DOJ can approve design forms directed towards compatibility with open source architecture, but only if the DOJ first determines that the design is as effective and tamper resistant as a fully locked down firmware system.
Wait, what?
Think about that for a second. Open source firmware that anybody can read.
That law, it has been written by someone who doesn't actually understand technical terminology, or a boomer. Like what he says right now, open source, but it's also resistant to tampering in the same way that, let's say, iPhone is. Even iPhones can be jailbroken. So how can you have open source software that is safer than proprietary software if iPhones can be jailbroken? That's $1 trillion company. How in the hell can you have open source software that it cannot be circumvented or jailbroken? That doesn't happen. Okay, and the companies that are going to be able to be compliant are just the bigger companies. And newcomers are going to be effectively barred from the company, or they would have to essentially be they would turn the bigger manufacturers into branded and white label manufacturers. So you're going to have, even if it survives, the competitiveness of the market is going to be significantly impacted. It's not going to be the best printers, it's going to be the most compliant printers, but their cost will not reflect on the value that they bring to the customer. It is
Change and modify has to be tamper resistant as much as a proprietary piece of firmware locked behind a manufacturer's signing key. That's not how open source works. And there's no timeline for the DOJ to evaluate open source designs. Nope.
like it's like I expect my park down the corner to be fundamentally safer than Fort Knox. What? Like, this is not...
budget, no agency assigned to it, no application process. Just one sentence in a bill that says it could theoretically happen if someone gets around to it.
Have you ever, that is, if you've ever seen like a startup and they just go, we are going to create this outlandish technology, anti-gravity. This is it. This is like the government side of this just ridiculous thing. You have to be able to demonstrate the technology before you expect everyone else to comply. Either ways, you otherwise, not either ways. Otherwise, you are being well, how do I put it politely, a dumbass.
As of March 1st, 2029, the 3D printers in your kids' classrooms are presumptively non-compliant. And it's not because they or you or anybody did anything wrong.
Think about this number, okay? If you are a middleman, if you are a small business, if you are manufacturing, this date essentially means that your stock in California, or to some extent earmarked to cover California or every other state that adopts similar regulation, essentially has an expiration date. So expenditures and new technology and just investment is gonna dry up for some fictitious problem if this doesn't get defeated. But because there is so much initiative, I am not going to be very optimistic, to be fair.
And here's something that connects everything we've been talking about. The compliance burden, all of it, is being put on the shoulders of people who've done nothing wrong. The bad actors are just going to route around it. Meanwhile, the classrooms, the makers, the businesses, the cosplayers, the prototype shops, even your dentist.
It's exactly what he said, and that's the pernicious thing with regulation sometimes, is that regulations can create de facto realities before there is a de jure reality. What he's saying is, before this law even gets passed into law, and it's just the law of the land or the state, it's going to create effects, and that cost gets passed from the government to the businesses to essentially resolve, to be compliant with, and to you, the end user. That's an issue. That's a massive issue, because this is a cop-out. In the state has the monopoly on enforcing things, and this is how we organize our societies, and that's a good thing. But the state should be able to, should be in law expecting things from the companies and the people that are realistic to be achieved. And if the cost to get this technology or those means is too high for private businesses, you have to step in as the state and actually do your goddamn job. It's like expecting people to be maintaining the roads. To some extent, yeah, you cannot just damage the roads, but you have services that in your municipalities that are doing this, because you need expertise and capital that average businesses and people just do not have. And when you do regulations in such a way, you are rolling those costs into the people and saying we fixed it. And again, for ghost guns, Americans have an issue with gun violence, not the entire world, but because we have large markets and America is a unified, rich market, is going to have cascading effects into even the Europeans, the Asians, the Australians. Everyone is going to feel this.
They're stuck inside a broken regime with a $25,000 per violation fine hanging over their heads. What? I want to be very clear about something. California's AB 2047 didn't come out of nowhere because a few California Democrats decided all of a sudden they were additive manufacturing experts. The bill is part of a national coordinated legislative strategy. Everytown for Gun Safety is one of the most prolific gun control organizations in the country. They help draft legislation, they help shape messaging, they help move bills from state to state. And right now, versions of this framework that we're talking about is appearing across multiple states at the same time. That matters because when people hear about bills like this in California, they go, oh, that's just California being California. No, this is an organized policy effort by a national advocacy group with enormous financial resources and political influence. It sounds really scary, and it gets the clicks. And this is exactly how the lobbyist funded machine works. Other states are
And to combat what Joel is saying, this is why we need to be sharing in our community videos such as mine, as Joel's, and really being um, outspoken with this, because what lobbyists have is a lot of money and concentrated interest, and in a population that is very passive, they are going to win. So we need to be raising awareness, but ultimately, like what he says later down this video, because this is pre-watched, we need to be contacting, and especially you Americans, because I'm European, they probably just gonna ignore me. I don't vote for them, so I'm not a customer for a politician. You need to pressure them to stop making. The only way to fight lobbyism is to, whenever there is regulation that is starkly against uh, your interest, even in a small degree, you need to be organized with other people in your communities who are affected and really putting the screws on them. They need to understand that if they start banning things left and right for no good reason, that they're not going to be getting your vote. Your vote is going to be going to the other guy. So you have to be blunt in this way. Like, you do this, we do that. Because this law, the way it was worded, okay, it is not a well-worded law. The technical specifications are not there. If you, as an individual, went into a company to build a software for you, an application or an internal kind of software, and you had that loose applications um, specifications, they would give you a bill that would be in the millions, and they would probably put into the contract some kind of clause that says, if you bust our balls too much, we are not going to be we cannot deliver. Because they are right, if you are that unclear in what you want, how can they give you a price point that makes sense? They would have to have an either cost plus contract, or they would have to have a contract that basically says that if you ask us too many things, additionally, we'd have to increase your payment, the size of the contract, the cost of the contract as you go.
watching. Other legislatures are moving similar bills. And what California does matters, because what California does always matters. California is the fourth largest economy in the world. If this broken bill passes, this template gets copied everywhere. We cannot allow this to happen. This bill doesn't make anyone safer. It disrupts education and business. And it's asking for something impossible that if you did it, you would be violating the First Amendment. So here's what we need from you, all of you.
Even the First Amendment that he says, I do not disagree with this, but that's not a European thing. There are cost considerations that we have to be very serious, and seems like a very, like you said, hastily made law. If this was like an initiative, a soft initiative, we want to create those tools. We have partitioned this amount of money. Those are the people and the teams that will participate in the development of those tools, and we can kind of reach a point that we have the software, this hardware, and maybe there is an understanding that the state is giving you some kind of license, and maybe they have some kind of publicly accessible support repository of chips and software. So if you are a new introduction into this system, like a new manufacturer, and you want to create your bespoke kind of machines, you actually have a way to go through not your competitors possibly, but through the state to be compliant. This doesn't do this. This creates walled gardens if it doesn't just kill them altogether.
Everybody watching this video, even if you're outside the United States, contact these assembly members. Be respectful, be specific, be helpful. This is a teaching opportunity. Use the talking points we have on the website about this bill. You can even BCC all 80 assembly members using the tools at the links we have there. Go to the link in the description, call them, email them, set up a...
Like he says, we need to be pushing them, pressuring them. We need to be respectful, and we need to show them why. This is not just an email. It's stupid. Just explain to them, like, a 3D printer is not a machine that understands geometry, so it would have to be slicer plus machine. You'd have there are a lot of open source designs, and they are not completely tamper proof. So you have a lot of legacy machines. What's that going to happen with me if I've just spent 50,000 euros buying machines for my small workshop. I'm hiring employees, I'm paying bills. You all have put my business essentially on a clock, 3.5 years, and I may not even be able to resell the business. And the only alternative may be getting that offshore. Good times to suggest production may be going away. And yeah, you need to be educating and you need to be bringing up to this community, but also to your people around you. Next time you go to a bar, next time you meet with your friends, bring this up, tell them this law makes no sense from the side of someone who has a technical understanding, even if they are very high level, like an engineer. That this law, how is that going to be applied? It has too much opacity where it matters, but too specific. It's too constrained on the things that we could push back because we do not know the things that matter.
Zoom call. Tell them how 3D printing affects you, how it affects the kids in your classroom. Be specific, be thoughtful. It takes 3 minutes. Also, please share this video with anybody who's using 3D printing for anything. Education, medicine, engineering, art, props, cosplay, prototyping, because everybody is affected by this legislation if it becomes law. If you can.
By the way, and this is something that Joel hasn't brought up, and he will not. Think about this way. To write this law, money had to be spent to lobby for the need. Money have to be spent in time for the committees to sit down and discuss it. Theoretically, money had to be spent on outside consultation, which it wasn't successful. It wasn't money well spent, to say the least. Unless which is a possibility, they just wanted to create something, like he said, that just gets the clicks. It shows they're doing something without really doing anything. And rather than putting restraints into how easy it is to get guns, they're just doing this shit. And money had to be spent for the law and its other law to go through subcommittees, and so that's work hours, man hours, money, and they have to be then sent back to be reworked. Probably, I don't know the process. I would have to look at it. I would suggest again there has to be a little bit of back and forth. All this is cost just until this gets passed. There's probably gonna be some cost because you have to have a public institution that deals with this. If it doesn't, it's just a law that does nothing. So it's just bloating the system for no good reason. And then you have costs that are impacting the market, the manufacturers, the filaments, the machines, the software, their services. So I wouldn't be surprised if you calculate everything. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a multi-billion dollars in just inefficiency every year in lost productivity. Because if you are, it's like peeling potatoes. You can peel a potato with a knife, with a peeler, or you can have those. They are mechanical peelers, and they just peel the potatoes for you. I've done all three of them. I can tell you right now, I'm not changing my peeler for a thing. I'm not peeling a potato using a knife. I'm not a heathen. So you have to like productivity. We kind of talk in those abstract terms, but imagine the money and the time and the effort wasted in something that may just cause, it may just shrivel up the economy, that section of the market, and the impact is not going to just go there. What it will do is will force capital that will be spent on printers and manufacturing to go into other areas. So someone who wanted to create a prop store or a prop workshop and they aren't clear, may decide to go into let's say property. So they start buying homes, apartments, they start jacking prices up. But you see inflation in other areas that you didn't expect because all the alternative ways of making money are getting regulated out of existence. And what that creates is you are seeing houses that are multiple times multiples of your incomes to such an extent that you may not even be able to afford one. So this is a small window how this can happen, but imagine how many more times has that happened in the past. And if we do not stop it and we do not become more engaged with politics and regulations and how law is being made, how many more times is going to happen in the future? And we have to stop it. The more you squeeze an economy, the worse it's going to be.
Get out. Get personal. You saw David Tobin in the Capitol at the judicial hearing as the technical witness for the bill's opposition. And since then, he's taken face-to-face meetings with Everytown's legal team and Assemblymember Bauer Cahan's team, and he's working with various organizations across the state and country. David Tobin is doing great work, and I'm going to put his Instagram down below because via his Instagram...
Two things. First of all, add both Joel and David Tobin. Secondly, one thing, and he already kind of talk to the fact that the bad guys are not going to be affected. I would say it would be for people who are actually doing ghost guns, it would be a windfall for them. Because imagine this, let's say this gets passed, okay? If you are a bad guy, and if I was the first thing I'm doing is I'm tracking down vendors, middlemen, small businesses that are 3D printing right now. And I can knock on your door and say, you know what, man, I would like to buy your printer for whatever reason. And I don't care. They theoretically they are already doing illegal things. So if you are selling illegal guns, what's the issue with paying a fine? You won't care. So you may be able to get on a discount a lot of really good machines, machines who weren't designed 2, 3, 4 years ago to be totally traceable, and you are going to just be able to get them on clearance. That's why you also need the buyback scheme, because if you don't do this, you are just going to flood the market with a lot of machines that do the exact thing, and the only people who will be willing to buy them are extreme enthusiasts or potential criminals. Like this is stupid.
Keeping people updated, and he's providing additional resources. I reached out to my local representatives here in Washington State, and David is doing great boots on the ground work in California. And I've heard from you out there, lots of you out there who have reached out to their representatives and their local municipalities. This is what a global community feels like. I love it. Technology is getting better, and we have to find a way to future-proof legislation as best we can. This is a wonderful chance to use California as a blueprint for how...
To be fair, I think the future proofing really would have to be that the burden of compliance has to fall on the state, that the state has to create actually the compliance tools, or they have to be able to, even that has its own restrictions, because if then you would have a company who would just play dumb to not have compliance issues. But one of the only way I can think about is you just putting in a law that as long as a law is asking compliance, is having compliance considerations, the state must have some kind of way to provide for tools to be compliant. Okay, and that's the first thing. But the most important thing is we have to be active as people. And I understand that we are going through times that we may be demoralized and we may not want to interact, but it's very important to interact, not in an animated and heated way. I've been somewhat animated in this video, but not in an animated, heated way and just a deranged way, but in a way that we are structuring arguments, and we want things to not get worse. By not being worse, we will get better over time, and I'm hopeful in that. But we have to be able to talk with one another and be able to really, even if you are one person and you don't want to be a part of a group, of a team, of some kind of collective, you watch this video or Joel's video, you just write an email to a couple of those people, if not all of them. Just tell them, you know, what, my friend, this is the issue. This is, like you said, how it affects me. Please reconsider. If we are all people, I hardly believe that if you have someone from the committee and they have received tens of thousands of emails that are telling them, listen up, man, this has some very technical weaknesses, that this is not going to get defeated. And we need to do that.
We can move forward, not backward. Links to the bill, the fiscal analysis, the petition, the resources, everything is down in the description below. And this is it. This is your time to do something. And I hope you do. This is a wonderful opportunity. I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thanks for watching. If you made this far, you're awesome. Don't forget to hug each other more. Fight.
I will be adding links to Joel's video. I will not be adding links to his sources. I would prefer that you go there, you see the video, you follow the steps. I will separate myself. I do not hope you do something. I want you to do something about this. Hope doesn't get us results. Action does. You don't have to be very detailed. You just have to say, I saw this bill. I have questions. Just I'm not okay with this. Just create this reaction, and this is gonna get us somewhere. And I want you to do, guys. I do not hope. I want you to do this. If you are a viewer of me, I would prefer that you do something about this, and I want you to do that. And my name is Thanos from Thanos 3D Prints. This is my video. If you've liked the video, it's probably gonna be right here, my subscribe button that's alerting you to subscribing to my channel, to sharing this. And I hope to see you soon in another video. I hope you see me soon in another video. And yeah, let's work together to maintain and preserve our hobby or your business. I'm Thanos. Share, like, subscribe, but most importantly, I want you to contact your representatives. I want you to bring up those issues with them. I'm Thanos. Good day to you guys. Bye.